And we welcome in our next guest to the Fighting Saints Report podcast, a Saint for life in Evan Janssen. And I think I can still safely say that without Mark Carlson hopping around the corner and giving me a dirty look. Is that correct? Still a Saint for life, just now the assistant coach of the Cedar Rapids Rough Riders as well.
I don't know. I think you're going to have to clear that one with him.
We'll send an email to Carlson before we air this live to make sure that that's okay. That's a good way to start it. We can record an alternate intro, though, if that's not kosher for him. But it is Evan Janssen, former Fighting Saint, and now an assistant coach with the Cedar Rapids Rough Riders. And Evan, first and foremost, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
And I think the excitement probably extends to that announcement that just came out roughly about a month ago. You were named to the Cedar Rapids Rough Riders staff, and just before this interview started, you were kind of taking me through your journey over the last 6 months to year. But for those that didn't hear that story, if you could just take us through what you'd been doing and then how you got to become the assistant coach of the Rough Riders.
Yeah, absolutely. About a year ago, I decided to get out of hockey for a little bit. I decided that my playing career was it was time to hang him up, and I moved down to Dallas, Texas, to pursue commercial real estate. And in my short time down there, I realized that hockey's where my true passion lies, and I missed the game. And so I started reaching out to all my contacts in hockey and former coaches, and kind of picked their brains. And it ultimately led me to the connection with Cedar Rapids. And, they were looking for a new assistant coach, and it worked out perfectly.
Does the vetting process take longer then because you were a former Fighting Saint? Did they ask more questions than were typically normal?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, Coach Carlson kind of knew me as a player, having played against him so many times that year that I was in Dubuque, and I know that he kind of followed Jim Montgomery in a sense of kind of studying the way that his teams played. So he was very familiar with me in Denver as well. And so obviously didn't know him on a personal level outside of the rink. But it's been great getting to know him in my short time so far in Cedar Rapids.
What's the excitement level like to start working with a guy like Carlson, who's such an established figure in the USHL and has been for so long?
Yeah, I'm extremely excited. I'm really fortunate for the opportunity. Like you said, he's got a great track record. He's the only coach in Cedar Rapids history, which is incredible. That's has something to say for itself. He's won 3 Anderson Cups, I believe, since he's been there, and 1 Clark Cup, and I believe he's won USHL GM and head coach of the year multiple times. And so that's really exciting for me. I'm excited to learn from him and grow it as a coach. And I hope to be able to add value to the coaching staff and the organization.
What's the first month or so been like in the position? Because obviously a lot of things are still different with the pandemic being ongoing, but what have you been able to accomplish with the coaching staff and Carlson so far?
So basically, I've just been familiarizing myself with, the systems that we use, the software programs, to kind of keep track of, scouting aspects and staying organized, and, how we break down film. But I've also been contacting all the players and kind of just introducing myself and letting them know my excitement level to be back in the USHL, where, things really started for me, and just excited to hopefully have an impact on them and help them achieve their goals.
Obviously, this is the first coaching gig for you professionally, but is there anyone that you've played under that you feel like you might already try to draw some stuff from and implement into your coaching style?
Absolutely. Obviously I play for Monty for 5 years, one in Dubuque and 4 in Denver, and was part of 2 championship teams, Dubuque and then obviously my senior year in Denver. So I feel as if, I'm going to use those experiences to ultimately, help me in the coaching realm, and just kind of seeing how he structured his teams, the systems he used. And obviously he was always a big, proponent of team first attitude. And, I've never seen anyone really get the most out of every player the way he did, as well as getting every player to really relish their role and buy into what we were trying to do collectively as a team.
When you decided to make the decision to go back to hockey from commercial real estate, was it just an aspect of trying to get back into something with hockey, or did you know you wanted to do coaching specifically?
So I always toyed with the idea of getting into coaching when I was done playing. And I actually had these conversations with Monty a year ago on whether, I should get into coaching right away or go pursue commercial real estate, which is what, I went to school for. And we kind of decided on the fact that because I was on the fence that I should go try something outside of hockey for a little bit, and maybe find a way to stay in hockey a little bit, which is what I did down in Dallas. They actually have this really cool program that is run by the Dallas Stars. It's called the off-campus PE program, and what it is kids in middle school and high school can get gym class credit to come to the rink and actually come on the ice for an hour and 15 minutes Monday through Thursday. And so I actually stayed in hockey in that form. I was a skills coach down there in that program, which was a lot of fun. And ultimately balancing doing that skills camp and my commercial real estate job, I just knew that hockey is where I wanted to be, and that's what I love, and that's what I'm passionate about.
How much of an added benefit do you think it will be for you as a coach to have played through the USHL and gone through a lot of the things that your players will be dealing with on a day-to-day basis?
I think it's going to be huge. I'm only 7-8 years removed from the league, and so having those experiences and kind of I've been in the player's shoes before, and obviously as a player you're going to have ups and downs throughout the season, and you're going to face some adversity, and that's something that I'm really excited about, is being able to help these guys through those situations and kind of guide them.
Let's go back to your USHL days, and you played 1 year with Dubuque. You mentioned it was under Jim Montgomery. To this date, still maybe one of, if not the most successful teams in USHL history. When you started off that year and the team goes, I believe it's 9-0 to start the year. I mean, how early on did you realize this is going to be a really special group of guys?
Yeah, so I actually got injured in our home opener that year, and I think I was out for 2 or 3 weeks after that, and I was getting nervous that I was going to get released or cut. We went on that 9-0 winning streak, and we just had so many good players and so much depth that I was shaking in my boots a little bit, and basically that's where I realized, this is a team that I think is going to do something special, and I just want to be a part of it in any way I can and add value to the team.
What were some of the most memorable moments about being on a team like that? Because each championship team has their different story, but what do you remember most about that experience throughout the entire year?
It's funny you asked that. I remember our kind of slogan that year was muck and grind. And I think Mike Smatula kind of came up with that. And he was one of our best players. I think he led our team in points that year. And when it starts from the top, when you have guys, your leadership group who loves playing a grinder game, I think that just kind of was ingrained in everyone. And we played a fast, physical game, and we played with a lot of pace, but it wasn't necessarily pretty. If you look at the league, every team in the league has skilled guys and a great top six, but where you win championships, in my opinion, is what you have in your bottom six, your depth players. And that's something that we had in Dubuque that year. I remember Monty saying that with a lot of our bottom six guys, if they were on any other team in the league, they would probably be playing a top six role. And so we just had so much depth. And you can give a title to each line, your first, or fourth line, but at the end of the day, everyone was contributing and offensively, and it was new guys doing it every night.
I have to ask, because everyone I've talked to from that team has mentioned the practices. I mean, were they as intense as everyone has told me they were?
They were. I remember. Me personally, I would pretty much prepare for a practice the same way I would as a game. And that's where my good habits started. Getting there, at least an hour early before practice, rolling out, stretching, dynamic warm up. Which I don't think that was very common for a lot of guys. At least back then, a lot of guys just like to kind of show up to the rink and chat for a while until it's time to put their gear on and go out. And I think that's where I learned my habits, and that's what helped me move on to the next level and have the career that I did.
Ultimately, the team rolls through the regular season and then wins the Clark Cup. Those final moments when Frankie tucks that puck in, do you remember where you were, what you saw? Did you see the puck go in? What was that last kind of culmination of the season like for you?
Yeah, so I remember in the locker room before we went out for overtime, I was sitting next to Frankie, and I think he talked about it in one of the one of the Zoom calls that you guys had with him. But he said something to me, and I told him to go out and get it, and he did. And I remember I was absolutely gassed. I think I had an opportunity to put it in my shift prior, and I fumbled it or something. I don't exactly remember, but I was gassed. I think I was sitting on the bench, and all of a sudden you could hear the crowd, kind of get up because, Frankie, they were coming in on a 2-on-1, him and Sooth or whatever it was. I think they ran a ladder play, and I jumped up, and sure enough, Frankie did it, and I just remember jumping over the boards, and half the guys went down to Art Bry, and the other half went to Frankie, and then we all met together in the middle of the ice. But
I've always
definitely a fun memory.
I've always wondered that I always see that every time there's a game-winning goal, players go to the goalie, players go to the guy who scored the goal. Is that a conscious decision that you make? Like, how do you decide which one to go to?
I personally, I didn't even think about it. I saw Frankie yard sale all his gear, and I think the guys that had jumped over before me went to Frankie, so naturally I just went to Frankie. But I know several other guys went to Artie, so I don't know what necessarily causes that, but obviously at the end of any game you go to your goalie, and so I think for some guys that must have been the natural reaction.
So after Dubuque, 4 years at Denver, and not just 4 years for you, but also the 4 years spent with Jim Montgomery, what was it like to have your coach from juniors come with you to college and be able to continue that relationship for all 4 seasons?
Yeah, that was a big advantage for me. Obviously, I remember going into Denver. A lot of the returning guys kind of looked to me for guidance, and I almost I don't want to say I was a leader, but felt like I was somewhat in a leadership role, in the sense that guys would come to me with a lot of questions, and whether that was practice, like how we're running drills, or what Monty looks for, or what he wants, and so that, I guess, helped me acclimate to college, and that was a real benefit for me.
What was the kind of culmination of your experience like in Denver? Not the but the progression, I should say, in terms of what was it like year one for you, and then how much did you feel like growth kind of took place every single year?
So freshman year, and this almost starts back in Dubuque, in the sense that, everyone that comes to the USHL, as a player is probably, one of the top, if not the top player on their team that they're coming from. And so, um, the USHL is obviously the best league in the junior league in the country, and guys are going to have to, maybe adjust their roles, or play a new role that they're not familiar with. And that actually happened to me. My year prior in the North American Hockey League, I played for the Alaska Avalanche, and I played the top six role there, and was a power play guy, and had a good year offensively. And then when I came to Dubuque, I would say I took a third, fourth line role, and was a penalty kill specialist. But, having Monty at the helm, he was so good at getting guys to understand what we were trying to accomplish as a team. And that's all that matters. And putting your individual goals aside. And, ultimately what I learned most from it is that the further the team goes, the further each individual goes. And so having that experience in Dubuque is what allowed me to come in and I guess stay level-headed, maybe, and, relish a fourth line role in college my first 2 years. And, my sophomore year, I actually was in and out of the lineup a little bit. And then my junior and senior year, I kind of moved up and played a third line role, and got a little power play time. And then my senior year, I was on the power play almost the whole year. And so offensively, my numbers went way, way up. And I probably like quadrupled my points from, my freshman and sophomore year. And so for me, that was tremendous growth. If you had asked me, at the end of my sophomore year, whether I would play professional hockey, I probably would have said, I don't think that opportunity will be there. But once again, it goes back to the further the team goes, the further each individual goes. And, going back to Dubuque, did I ever think I would, go play hockey at a school with such a storied hockey program? Absolutely not. But once again, we won. Same thing in Denver, having won the national championship my senior year. Ultimately I ended up signing an American League contract out of Denver, which I would have told you were crazy if you asked me that after my sophomore or even my junior year.
Looking at that Denver team that you guys won it all with, how many similarities were there for you between that team and the 2012-13 Dubuque Fighting Saints team? Because when I look up and down both rosters, I mean, both rosters have just a ton of names that immediately jump out, and you remember exactly how good that player was that year. How similar were the two teams?
I think very similar, actually, in the sense that we had so much depth. Our third and fourth line in Denver, could contribute offensively just like our third and fourth line did in Dubuque. And that's what you need to make long runs, in my opinion. You need every line to be going, and to be providing offense, here and there once in a while. And ultimately, when you have that depth, it's hard for other teams to keep up with that.
Looking at the top four scorers that year, Troy Terry, Henrik Borgstrom, Dylan Gambrell, Will Butcher, all now have NHL teams right next to their names when you look them up. When you were playing with those guys, especially I would say Gambrell, Borgstrom, and Terry, they were all freshmen or sophomores that year. Did you know early on when they came to the program that they were going to be something special?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you could tell from day one. Um, you knew that for some of them it was going to be maybe a little longer development process. In the sense of maturing physically and mentally to move on to the next level. But yeah, 100% knew that those guys would all move on to the NHL level.
Being a part of two championship teams, two different levels, is there any one characteristic? I know you mentioned depth, but is there any one characteristic outside of that maybe that you really feel is key to make a championship team?
Absolutely, and that would just be the sense of the team first mentality that Jim Montgomery is so good at kind of pounding into his teams. There are multiple guys on both rosters that could play a top six role in any other college team, in the country. But everyone knew what we were trying to do and what we were capable of, and very accepting to take a different role and run with it. I know you look at the St. Louis Blues this past year. I heard that Coach Berube talked about how he asked Alex Steen to I think he played on the fourth line, and he never complained about it, didn't say anything. He just relished it, and that's what you need out of guys like that in order to have success.
Well, Evan Janssen, a former Fighting Saint, now an assistant coach with the Cedar Rapids Rough Riders. Thanks for taking the time today. One more question, since you're now coming back to the USHL, and that would be, what building are you most excited to get back into and coach in the USHL?
That's definitely Dubuque. Misty Community Ice Center obviously has a special place in my heart, and really excited to continue the rivalry there with us in Cedar Rapids, and kind of fight for that Cowbell Cup.
That was so obviously a leading question for you to say, Dubuque, and I didn't even realize it as I was asking it. So I want to do a different question, the same one, but maybe outside of Dubuque, since it was such an obvious answer and it just went right over my head. What other building are you really excited to get into that you like playing? Maybe an away place that you like playing at as a player?
I guess I would just have to say Green Bay, because that's where I'm from. That's where I grew up. And, I think it'll be special for my family and friends to be able to come to a game, and obviously it'll be different, not having me on the ice, but, behind the bench. I know, my family is really excited and happy for me. And, I obviously owe it to my parents, supporting me my whole life and giving me the opportunity to play and, ultimately reach my goals. So.
Well, Evan, we congratulate you on the new gig with Cedar Rapids. We hope you don't get booed too badly when you come back to the Mesquite Community Ice Center. And we hope to see you behind the bench sooner rather than later.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.